She sat across from a morning television host. She smiled at the camera and spoke about helping children cope with the loss of a loved one. The book she had written was called Are You With Me? To viewers, it looked like the story of a mother turning grief into hope. But by the time that interview aired, investigators were already building a very different case. According to prosecutors, the story behind that loss was very different from the one viewers were hearing that morning. This is the case of Kouri Richins, and this is what the evidence and court records reveal.
Eric Eugene Richins was born on May 13, 1982, in Bountiful, Utah. He built a life rooted in hard work and family. He owned C&E Stone Masonry alongside his business partner, Kouri Richins. Outside of work, he coached his son's soccer teams, raised cattle, and was known as a father who rarely missed a moment that mattered. After his death, the young team he coached continued ending practices with the same chant they had always used. 1, 2, 3. Eric.
For those who knew him, it was their way of keeping his memory alive. Eric was the son of Jean and Linda Richins. His family later described him as someone who wasn't just present in his children's lives, but deeply involved in them every single day. Kouri Darden's childhood followed a very different path. Born in Oklahoma in 1990, she was the oldest of several siblings. When she was 6 years old, her father was no longer part of the family's life after a serious legal matter involving a crash while driving under the influence. Her mother, Lisa Darden, struggled with a gambling addiction, and the family moved frequently, living in 17 different states before Kouri reached adulthood. Around the year 2000, the family eventually settled in Utah. Years later, while she was attending college, Kouri met Eric Richins at a Home Depot in Park City. Their relationship grew, and on June 15, 2013, they were married during a backyard ceremony in Camas, Utah. Over the years that followed, they welcomed 3 sons. To friends, neighbors, and the people around them, they appeared to be building a stable life together. Even Kouri's brother, Ronnie Darden, would later publicly defend her. From the outside, the Richins family looked like they had found exactly what many people hope for. But appearances would soon be tested in ways no one expected. On the surface, Kouri Richins appeared to be building a successful career in real estate. She spoke confidently about buying and renovating high-end properties, but behind the scenes, prosecutors say the business was under growing financial strain. According to court records, she relied heavily on short-term, high-interest loans to keep projects moving. Instead of easing the pressure, the debt continued to grow until investigators alleged she owed lenders more than $1.8 million. As investigators pieced together the finances, they uncovered a series of transactions that raised further questions. Prosecutors allege that in 2019, Kouri opened a bank account Eric did not know about and obtained additional credit using documents that Eric later disputed. Eric also began noticing unexplained withdrawals, unfamiliar charges, and financial activity he insisted he had never approved. Investigators further alleged
that several life insurance policies had been taken out in Eric's name without his knowledge. They also claimed large sums of his personal and business funds had been used without authorization. By late 2020, Eric had started taking steps to protect his future. He met with divorce and estate attorneys, updated his will, created a trust for his 3 sons, and placed control of his estate with his sister, Kouri Richins Benson. Although the couple later reconciled, investigators say the financial problems remained. During the same period, Kouri had begun a relationship with Robert Josh Grossman, a detail prosecutors would later point to as an important part of their theory of motive.
In January 2022, prosecutors say Kouri Richins obtained another life insurance policy in Eric's name. Valued at $100,000, it became the 5th policy she had taken out over a 7-year period, according to court records. Later that month, investigators say Kouri approached the family's housekeeper, Carmen Lauber, with an unusual request. Carmen, who had previously worked for Kouri's aunt before joining the Richins household, was allegedly asked to help obtain prescription pain medication. Kouri reportedly claimed it was for someone recovering from an accident. Weeks later, prosecutors say the request became more specific. Kouri allegedly asked for what she called the Michael Jackson stuff, an apparent reference to propofol, the anesthetic widely associated with Michael Jackson's death. Carmen later testified that she could not obtain that drug. Instead, according to prosecutors, Carmen purchased a controlled opioid from Robert Crozier, paying about $900 for between 15 and 20 pills. Investigators allege there were 3 separate exchanges, supported by phone location data, that placed Carmen and Crozier near a gas station in Draper on February 11th, February 26th, and March 9th, 2022. Around the same time, Kouri was also communicating with Robert Josh Grossman. Prosecutors later pointed to one particular conversation, arguing that it reflected planning and intent.
Grossman would eventually testify about those communications during court proceedings. At the time, each event appeared unrelated. Looking back, investigators say those moments would later become key pieces of the timeline they presented to the jury. On Valentine's Day, 2022, Eric became seriously ill after dinner at home. According to prosecutors, he later told a friend he believed his wife had tried to poison him. The investigation alleges that the incident did not end there. By the end of February, prosecutors say Kouri Richins obtained another supply of fentanyl, just days before Eric Richins would be found dead. March 3rd, 2022. Kouri later told investigators the evening had been a celebration. According to her account, the couple had closed on a $3.9 million property she planned to renovate and sell. She said she prepared Eric a Moscow Mule, which he took with him to bed. She also told investigators she fell asleep in one of the children's bedrooms while comforting a son after a nightmare, and did not return to her own bedroom until about 3 a.m. That, she said, was when she found Eric. He wasn't breathing. He was cold to the touch. She called 911. At first, investigators had only Kouri's account of what happened that night. It would take time for evidence to emerge that prosecutors say contradicted that version of events. That evidence would become the focus of the next chapter. Keep that 911 call in mind. As investigators began examining Kouri Richins' account, they uncovered evidence that prosecutors say conflicted with key parts of her version of events. Piece by piece, the investigation shifted from what she claimed had happened to what the evidence appeared to show.
If you appreciate true crime documentaries built from court records, sworn testimony, and verified evidence, not speculation, consider subscribing, because from this point forward, the case becomes far more detailed.
Investigators didn't begin with a confession. They began with contradictions. According to investigators, phone records showed Kouri Richins' device active and moving through the house during periods when she had told detectives she was asleep with her children. By itself, that evidence did not prove a crime, but it prompted investigators to examine the rest of her account more closely. As the investigation continued, authorities also reviewed activity from her phone after Eric's death. Prosecutors say it included searches about whether deleted text messages could be recovered, what items were permitted inside Utah jails, and what amount of fentanyl could be considered a lethal dose. 3 days after Eric died, investigators say Kouri drilled into his safe and removed at least $125,000 in cash.
Another detail also drew investigators' attention. When the family's housekeeper, Carmen Lauber, asked what had happened, Kouri did not mention fentanyl. Instead, she told Lauber that Eric had died from a brain aneurysm. To investigators, that statement became another piece of a growing timeline, one they believed raised further questions about the account Kouri had given in the days after Eric's death. On May 8, 2023, Kouri Richins was arrested. Prosecutors charged her with aggravated murder in Eric Richins' death, along with 3 counts of possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute. A month later, Kouri filed a civil lawsuit against her husband's estate, claiming she was entitled to assets under their prenuptial agreement. The court paused those proceedings while the criminal case remained pending. In August 2023, prosecutors announced they would not seek the death penalty. According to court filings, that decision was made after consulting with Eric's father and sisters. The following month, another development drew attention to the case. During a search of Kouri's jail cell, investigators recovered a letter hidden inside a book. It later became known in court filings as the Walk the Dog letter. Prosecutors argued the letter was evidence of witness tampering. The defense disagreed, maintaining it was a work of fiction that Kouri had been writing as part of a novel. By November 2023, the court had denied the defense's motion to dismiss the case based on issues surrounding that letter. In March 2024, prosecutors expanded the case. They filed an additional charge of attempted aggravated murder tied to an incident they allege occurred weeks before Eric Richins' death, along with additional fraud-related charges. 2 months later, Kouri Richins' defense team withdrew from the case. Her attorney, Sky Lazaro, later said the withdrawal was the result of a conflict of interest stemming from the firm's earlier work involving Kouri's estate matters, not any allegation of misconduct. New attorneys, Wendy Lewis and Kathy Nestor, took over the defense, Around the same time, Kouri spoke publicly about the case for the first time.
Able to speak out for the first time is terrifying, but is much needed. The world has yet to hear who I really am, what I've really done, and what I really didn't do. Give me a chance to prove it to you. Let me show you the facts. Let me show you the evidence. I will not give up. I will not give in. Please, just give me a chance. What I've really done is protect Eric at all costs. What I really didn't do is murder my husband. I could not and would not ever do that to Eric, or anyone for that matter.
She described the experience as terrifying, but necessary, asked the public to keep an open mind, and said she had protected Eric rather than harmed him. She also said she intended to continue fighting the charges against her. By then, the prosecution had expanded well beyond the original murder allegation, and the case had become significantly broader than when it first began.
Nearly 4 years passed between the night Eric Richins died and the start of the trial. Inside the courtroom, every claim would be measured against the evidence. The question was no longer just what happened to Eric. It was whether prosecutors could prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. If you've made it this far, consider subscribing. Every case on this channel follows the evidence from the first report to the final verdict, relying on court records, sworn testimony, and verified facts.
Opening statements began on February 23, 2026, in Utah's 3rd District Court. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Prosecutors called 40 witnesses. The defense called none. Kouri Richins did not testify in her own defense. Forensic accountant Brooke Carrington testified about Kouri's finances, describing a real estate business that had expanded from 5 active projects to 15 in a single year. The jury also heard testimony that property purchases had increased from just over $2 million to nearly $7 million, while more than $1.5 million was owed to lenders. Allison Wright, the wife of Eric Richins' business partner, testified that Kouri had once told her she felt trapped in her marriage. Robert Joshua Grossman, who had reconnected with Kouri before Eric's death, also testified about their relationship and his involvement in her real estate projects. He has not been accused of any wrongdoing in this case. The defense presented a different interpretation of the evidence, suggesting Eric may have been involved in a relationship outside the marriage, based on messages introduced during the trial. By mid-March, both sides had rested their cases. The decision now belonged to the jury. On March 16th, 2026, after roughly 3 hours of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict. Kouri Richins was found guilty on every charge: aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, forgery, and 2 counts of insurance fraud. Sentencing took place on May 13th, 2026. Judge Richard Mrazek sentenced Kouri to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Kouri addressed the court before sentencing. In a lengthy statement directed to her 3 sons, she denied killing their father. Her children's responses were presented through statements read by their therapists. According to the court proceedings, all 3 said they did not feel safe if their mother were ever released. One child, identified in court records as AR, stated that directly. 2 weeks later, Kouri's attorneys filed a notice of appeal.
She wrote a book about how children learn to live with loss. By the time the last verdict was read, the book had already been pulled from shelves, quietly removed, by the same booksellers who once carried it as a story about grief. Kouri Richins is currently serving a life sentence with an appeal already filed. A separate financial crimes case, built from decades of paper trails and forged signatures, is still working its way through Utah's courts, with no trial date set. Eric Richins never got to see how his case would end. His sons did. And in their own words, delivered to a courtroom, they made clear which version of this story they believed. If you want to see how the next case comes together, built the same way, fact by fact, subscribe to this channel now. There's always another file to open.